week first hit the airwaves last summer. It takes us into the exciting world of white coats and clipboards. Have a look at this.
Institutes around the world and the Australian Hair and Scalp Foundation have found a shampoo that has twice the anti-dandruff ingredients. Head & Shoulders Intensive Solutions. With 2 times ZPT, it's more effective in removing dandruff than other anti-dandruff shampoos. That's why Head & Shoulders is certified effective by the Australian Hair and Scalp Foundation. Intensive solutions from Head & Shoulders. Twice the ZPT, so you're twice as sure.
OK, let's just wind that tape back a little. 2 times ZPT. Now, I love a miracle ingredient as much as the next sucker, but I've got no idea what ZPT is. Russell, does that matter, or will the ad be more effective because I don't know?
Head & Shoulders is a product that works for people with dandruff. And they're highly likely to know what ZPT is, in that they may well read the ingredient when they're in the shower. And if it's going to have twice as much, then they're going to think that's twice as good and it's going to work. It's the active ingredient.
The reason they use science, or referred to science in the ad, is because most people think of dandruff as a kind of disease or a medical condition as opposed to a beauty problem. So they use a lot of science to give it sort of credibility and authority.
People need to know that it's not just shampoo. There has to be something in it, which is the reason to believe.
Yeah, but it's the reason to believe, isn't it? If they'd said in that ad, now with less ZPT, we'd be like, oh, awesome, it's got less ZPT.
No, we wouldn't.
Well, let's have a look at the Australian Hair and Scalp Foundation office then. OK. Now, there are 2 staircases to the same floor, which is a little weird, and they make the shape of a cross. Now, Todd, is this a vaguely subliminal attempt to reinforce the 2 times message? Do, like, ads actually go to this sort of length?
One of the research techniques used in advertising now has become really, really popular is the study of signs and symbols, because it's a visual shorthand. So it's called semiotics, actually. But to use that in this case, you would, a doctor's title immediately triggers exactly what this is and triggers credibility. White lab coats, purity, and sterile, clipboards, and all of these things are all part of visual shorthand. You can say a lot in 30 seconds by just showing these things.
Look, I think this whole, subliminal thing is just a myth. Drink Coke. Because if we did have using subliminal messages in our advertising, eat apples, then consumers would just give us a Kinder Surprise.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's have another look at the office. This is another thing. There's not a lot of colour. White desks in a white office with white mats, white phones, and people in white shirts and coats. Dan, how do they even find the dandruff they're studying?
Well, look, after Cadburyland fell to the white supremacists, clearly the Australian Hair and Scalp Foundation put up very little resistance. But look, I don't have a problem with, the white office furniture. I mean, how bad's your dandruff if it's piling up on furniture? I mean, we've all got a little bit around the collar, but if you're making mandala patterns out of white flakes on the coffee table, I mean, that's not dandruff. You're fucking eroding.
Sins. I have worked on Head & Shoulders.
Oh.
And I can tell you that this has been researched, and it has been, every single scene by scene has been looked at and researched. And the problem is these kinds of very rational kind of pseudo-scientific ads work extremely well in research because they look good on storyboards as static things. Unfortunately, television is an emotional medium. I do not believe this ad is particularly effective. I think it just becomes wallpaper and people don't notice it because it doesn't emotionally engage us at all.
What is the Australian Hair and Scalp Foundation? We went looking. It wasn't in the phone book. Search engines struggled to find anything. A company search turned up 2 addresses. The registration address led to the office of an accountant. The place of business address turned out to be St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne. St Vincent said it hadn't heard of the foundation. The name of the documents was Rodney Sinclair, a professor of dermatology at the hospital. He confirmed that the foundation does exist and it was set up with funding from Procter & Gamble, the company which owns the Head & Shoulders brand. Professor Sinclair said it is a legitimate research body, but that's not its laboratory in the ad. Russell, some would call this image of the Hair and Scalp Foundation a dramatisation. Others might call it a bit misleading. What's the line between the 2?
The professor does exist. The foundation does exist. They do research in order to find out that 2 times ZPT does work. That is the ingredient. That's the reason to believe. It's a hugely successful product. And if we want to get really into it, you are unable to say anything in advertising which isn't correct. The ACCC will get you for false and deceptive and misleading conduct. So this is a highly professional advertiser that does know what it is doing.
But are we in a grey area when it's one guy at a hospital with an address being this entire foundation, and yet on TV they're making out like it's this, you know, sexy scientist white building?
No, well, if I can be really frank, I think that's a particularly ABC point of view. I think...
we are on the ABC.
Yeah. I know.
It's advertising. Well, Dan, the industry's big on self-regulation. You know, should this sort of thing be allowed to go through? Is it fine?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, this ad doesn't even need self-regulation. Consumers will regulate it for us. I guarantee you 99% of people watching this ad are either going or they're changing the channel. And the 1% that are watching this ad and are believing everything they see, those people deserve everything they get. With the possible exception of the baby bonus.
In the interests of full and frank disclosure, this is what the Gruen offices look like. Because we practice what we preach.